Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Squad for Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I'd like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want you fired up about Christian education and self-help. My guest today is Tom Jones, and we're talking about his book, Bible Mysteries Uncovered. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Tom. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Well, good morning to you, Dr. Angela. I'm glad to meet you, and I'm privileged to be with your show.
Thank you so much for being on, and I can't wait to talk to you about your book. But as is tradition around here, we always give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps those few people out there that may be unfamiliar with you or your work. So my first question to you is, what makes you you?
What makes me me? That's a good question. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and attended this Union Avenue Baptist Church most all of my younger life. I joined the service and went into the Air Force and stayed for 23 years and came out and started some business on my own, different ones. And I have two kids, a boy and a girl, and I've got 3 grandkids also. And I'm 84 years old, and I'm inspired to clear some things up for people.
I love it. Well, my dad is also retired Air Force. He also did 23 years. So thank you so much for your service to God, family, and country. I appreciate your doing so. Thank you so much. Now, with that being said, being an author, is that something that you have always wanted to do? Or did you find that it simply presented it along your life path, the opportunity arose for you?
Well, yeah, I've never, English was my worst subject in school, so I don't know how I got into writing. But nevertheless, I've never really desired to be a publisher or a writer and published, but I ran into something in my Christian life, and I just feel like I just really want the people to know and understand what I've learned in my studies.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I find that so many people are like that. It's like, I cannot keep this information to myself. I must share this because it's just so important. And I gotta get the word out. So I can definitely understand that. Now, the title of your book, Bible Mysteries Uncovered. Why did you select those words to entitle your book?
Would you say that again, your question?
Sure. The title of your book, Bible Mysteries Uncovered. Why did you choose those words as the title of your book?
Well, that best represents what's inside my book. I've got 57 mysteries that are in the book, so it just seemed appropriate to tell people that some of the mysteries are revealed in my book, and I'd like for them to know them.
I can definitely understand that. Now, did you have a particular motivation? Did you have a particular something that happened that really prompted you to go on and get that published word out there to the rest of us?
Well, yes, I did. And in a way, I've always liked to study the book of Revelations because it brings together the whole Bible. And in doing so, I ran into some mysteries that I wanted other people to understand. And I had a lot of questions in my prison ministry from the prisoners that made me think about these other mysteries that they didn't understand and couldn't answer. And so I got to studying them myself, and I began to realize that, there's a lot of different information there than what we've been taught. And so that's what I am motivated in that sense, because I care about the people, and I'm afraid that, and the Bible tells us this, that there are going to be many that's falling away from Jesus. And I'm afraid that some of my brothers and sisters, not knowing what the Bible tells us about time and our existence, may fall away. And I'm really concerned about that particular aspect.
Absolutely, and you're so right. You are so right. I remember hearing someone say, if we are not living in the end times, we are definitely living closer to the end times, because for those who know, you're starting to see things line up, or they appear to be lining up a particular way. So I can definitely understand your cause for urgency there in spreading the good news of the gospel to others. Now, when it comes to reading your book, do you suggest that everyone read it from cover to cover, like page after page? Should they read it chapter by chapter, or more like a devotional, read a couple of pages at a time and really digest that? What's your suggestion there?
Well, I've always felt like if you start at the beginning and read all the way through, it's the best for me. But somebody else, they might like to pick and choose, because they may already know this mystery, and, they would rather go to one that they're not familiar with. So it's really up to the reader.
And I can understand that. You made a good point there. If you're already familiar with that one, you may want to skip over it. But you never know. Go on and read it. You might find, a new epiphany. You never know what will be revealed to you, but I do understand why you would say that. Now, we've heard this in church conversation, or in when we talk about our faith, the phrases traditions and half-truths. You mentioned half-truths and traditions in your book. How do you cover that? How do you address it?
Well, for a long time, not everybody, there's nobody that knows everything in the Bible. So we still have some errors that we're motivated by, because traditions are very motivating for most people. And half-truths are, in a sense, half-righteous. And a lot of people are not familiar with those terms, but I am, and the way that I look at things. For example, a half-truth is this. We've been taught from the pulpit, and by well-meaning pastors, by the way, I don't have anything against pastors, that lost souls are going to hell. And that in itself is a half-truth, because now you have to know where the places are that different people are going to go to be held awaiting the final judgment day. So hell is basically a holding place, and we see that if we go into the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. And Lazarus was a beggar that sat outside of his gate, and the rich man never did anything for him, never bought him any food or water or anything. And when they both died, Lazarus went to the bosom of Abraham. So Abraham, being the father of faith, we have no doubt that he's in a place called paradise. And it is also called that in that particular verse of scriptures. And then the rich man went to a place where he was tormented. And I use that name as the place of torment also, because it is the holding place for the final destination of lost souls. And you can read this in Revelation 20:14 through 15, is the lake of fire. So why is it hot for the rich man, but he's not in the lake of fire? And he wanted, Lazarus to dip his finger in the water so he could cool his tongue. So it's a place of heat. And I personally feel that this holding place is somewhere near the lake of fire, so that one of the punishments is the rich man can see where he's going to end up. So that's like a half-truth. Now, traditions have been around for many, many years. I think probably the Hebrews started them, and they're called the traditions of the elders. And Jesus never did speak well of traditions. Matter of fact, he had one encounter with some rich people over that versus taking care of their family with their money. And Jesus was very down on them about that. But anyway, the Catholic Church has sacred traditions, and I took instructions for the Catholics, and they finally just asked me to leave, but I didn't mind that. But there's good people, don't misunderstand me. But I have such a different look on things, and it's going to be a challenging read for some people because it's going to be different. But also the traditions in the Catholic Church are called, are sacred traditions, and that's where I had problems with some of their traditions. And the Southern Baptists have some, and other ones, Dominions also have, denominations have some also. But Jesus never did speak well of traditions.
Right. You are so true. And I think that anyone who looks at Christian history, you will find that there are some things that have been put into place just for I'm going to say the organization of church or of worship, and things have been put into place to make sure that people know where to go and what to do at what time and all of that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are things that have anything to do with our salvation. So you are so right about that. Now we have about 2 minutes left in this section, but I wanted to make sure that I asked you about the sections of the book. If I understand, you have written the book in 5 sections. Is that right? And why did you do that?
Well, the reason why I did it is so that each section will be bringing mysteries sort of associated with that particular section. Does that make sense?
Right. So for better organization and understanding for the reader to be able to really digest everything on that topic in one section, as opposed to having to read the entire book to fully understand?
Yeah, you got it.
All right.
You're a smart gal.
Love it. And that's very smart of you. I love that. It's like, help people understand. Like, don't make it more difficult. Make it easier for folks to understand the information. I love it. Well, Tom, it is time for us to take a break. But before we do, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Well, the title of the book is Bible Mysteries Uncovered. It can be bought in any bookstore. And I have a website, too, that people can contact me if they'd like for questions they may want to answer. And it is phantom2e@comcast.net. And I'll spell it F.
All righty, everyone.
Okay.
Now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butch-Chester. My guest today is Tom Jones, and we're talking about his book, Bible Mysteries Uncovered. Well, my next question for you is about the mysteries. Now, my listeners know that I'm going to say, if you want to know about all of them, you have to what? Buy the book. So I know that you're not going to reveal all of them to us, but can you tell us perhaps maybe about one of the sections, about one of the mysteries, and how do you reveal it?
Okay, I'll be glad to. One of the mysteries that has confused many people for many years, and me for one, too, until I studied it, and I've heard for a number of years that 2 Peter 3:8, which pertains to 1,000 days is like a 1,000 days is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day, and that's in 2 Peter 3:8. And many times I'd heard, well, not many times, but one pastor that I was talking about that said that that only meant that there were 1,000 cattle on 1,000 hills, and that made no sense to me. So I went back and did a little bit more studying in that. In chapter 3 it's a saying of history. It's actually recording history for us, because he asked us to remember. He said, firstly, he says, do remember this. And he said that the earth was void. The earth was in water. The earth was destroyed by water, and a number of other items. And then it talked about the judgment day. And then the very last verse that he quoted there was not the last one, but chapter 3:8. Verse 8 says that a day to the Lord is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. Well, that's an interesting statement, but how would it apply? We've got two measurements of time. One measurement of time is the creation was done in 24 hours. And we know that by nature, and we can count on it almost every day. Well, I hope we do. But when we apply the other measurement of time, how does it apply? Well, you have to work backwards for this one, because we know that Jesus' kingdom is for 1,000 years. And on day 7, God said he's going to rest. Well, God doesn't need to rest. He's plenty powerful. So what is he trying to say to us about this 1,000 years, I should say, for Jesus' kingdom? Well, if day 7 is 1,000 years, then all the rest of the days of creation must be 1,000 years too, in his overall time plan for man. So if that's true, then we have a period of 7,000 years, and 6,000 would be right before the rapture, right? And that's easily proven, and I've got graphs in my book to show. Some people go well with graphs, some don't. But it shows basically the time that we are in and at. And there are a number of scriptures that allude to it also. And Hosea 2:1 and 2 is probably the best one, because he talks about 2 days Israel will be cast out, and also one day they will be living in the sight of the Lord. So that is 2,000 years for the first aspect, for the 2 days, and then the other 1 day was 1,000 years. And that's basically where we're at if we look at our time frame and what happened to Israel and where they're at this time.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for that explanation, because there are so many people that that they have the exact same question too. They're wondering about that, and many times, unless you're the type of person that's going to read the commentaries, or unless you've been to seminary, you may not be familiar with that, or the concept, or even the idea of a day not actually being a day in the time frame of which we think about it. I mean, there are people who are still confused as to how Christ could be crucified on a Friday and Sunday be the third day. So there's so much that unless you really talk to someone who's able to explain those little nuances in how time is calculated or what it truly means, you're so right. People are still confused, and they want to believe, and they really want to get as much as they possibly can out of Scripture. They just don't know where to turn. Thank you for that clarification. Now, what is, as far as your goal was concerned when it comes to this book, many people want to get a particular piece of knowledge out to the general public. Others want to kind of share bite-sized pieces on different topics to really get someone inspired to go deeper. What is your goal with sharing your knowledge, with sharing this book with the masses?
Well, what I'm trying to do is give them a better foundation with the knowledge that I have gained, so that they can see the practicality of the Bible. And another thing that I try to instill in people is that, this is not reality that we're in. This is only going to last for 70, 80 years if we're strong. And after that, what comes? So this is not reality. Eternity is reality. So why do we waste so much of our time on this existence on this earth? And to get to that eternal is more important than what we do so much here on earth. We don't need to be big businessmen. We don't need to be well-known athletes and things of that nature. We need to be with Jesus. And that's what I want for my readers to get from my book. The last three sections of it deal with Christians, what I desire for them, and the non-Christians, what I desire for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to agree with you there. We need to really utilize the time that we have here properly, and not on all of this other stuff that's going on, because Earth is just a temporary home for us. I have to agree with you there. Now, for so many of our authors, this is not their first go at the rodeo. They've written other books and they wish to continue writing. Many of the authors that I have on, however, this is their first time. And I'm so happy to be able to bring either our novice authors and our seasoned authors to my listening audience as well. I understand that you have written other books. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, yes, I can. The first book that I wrote, being I was so interested in Revelation, I wrote the book Fig Leaves Are Forming and Summer is Near. And the publisher that I had published for it did a good job, but we had some communication problems, and it got printed before it got edited. So I haven't, stressed on that book too much at all. I'm at the process now of having it reprinted, and it should be out maybe in the winter. The other book that I've written is Parables, Bible Building Blocks. It also is in the pipeline for publishing, and it should be out probably in the winter or summer of next year also. And it has to do with all the parables in the Bible that a lot of people do not understand. A parable is the truth. God doesn't use an untruth or fiction to tell of a spiritual truth. He uses a true story to tell of a true event or system that he wants to teach us. So the other one was Formation Training Manual. That's something I wrote years ago. It was published, but I'm the one that does the printing on that particular book, so they'd have to contact me at my website that I have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Now, if you could give yourself a piece of advice as before you wrote your very first book, you have, gone through the process, the do's, the don'ts, the ups, the downs. What piece of advice would you give to yourself in writing your first book that you know now, that may also be able to help some of our aspiring authors out there?
Well, the best thing I can give them is know the English language. But
yeah,
that has been a stigma with me and a problem with me, because, like I told you, that was my worst school and worst subject in school. But also being dedicated to what you believe and what you want to write, and stick with it, because it's a trial and error. I tell you what, it can be tough at times. So stay with it and keep up the good work.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. Well, Tom Jones, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I appreciate your sharing, and I think that you have definitely enlightened, inspired, and empowered someone today. Now, before I let you go, though, can you remind everyone one last time, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And for those who would like to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Okay, my book title is Bible Mysteries Uncovered, and it can be bought at in any location, especially bookstores and stuff like that. And just contact me at my website, which is phantom2e@comcast.net, and I'll be glad to answer questions.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Tom, for being a guest on the show.
You're more than welcome. I appreciate you.
And listeners, thank you for tuning in and spending time with us here as well. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you to become your best self. Now, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about inspirational living. My guest today is Toria Newman, and we are talking about her book, Undercover, Miss Speedy Wheels. Now, I like that title. Now, you know what I'm going to tell you to do? Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello.
Now, before we get talking about your book, the tradition here on the show is that we give every guest an opportunity to introduce themselves to perhaps the one or two people out there that are unfamiliar with you or with your work. So my first question to you, Toria, is what makes you you?
Well, I have a disability which is called cerebral palsy, and I've had that since I was 8 days old, and I think that defines me in a lot of ways because my life is different. Because of the cerebral palsy, it does not mean that I have a bad life. I have a really good life, and I've enjoyed my life, and I live a different life to other people, so it's not boring.
I like that. It is not boring, and just because you have cerebral palsy doesn't mean that it's, a bad life to live. I have a sister-in-law that has it as well, and I love her attitude too. You guys are as positive as you can possibly be, and it is so contagious. I love it. Your positivity, that is. Your positivity is contagious, and I love it. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that life simply presented the opportunity and you have been able to share with the rest of us?
No, I didn't become an author until I was in my 30s, and it was a very slow process. My mother, though, she was a writer. She wrote books, and she was a person that wrote for magazines and things like that. And so I think that I inherited that from her. And then I thought, oh, maybe I could do that as well. So I had a go at it. And I thought, gee, I like that. So that's what I've done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the title of your book, Undercover, Miss Speedy Wheels. I like the title. How did you come about that title?
It just popped into my head and I thought, wow, I like that. And so I wrote it down and I ran it by a couple of people and they said, oh yes, that sounds just like you. And so that's what we went with.
Absolutely. I love it when it's fun and it's kind of a quirky title and it's catchy. So I love it. I love it. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your main character?
Yes, her name is Robbie, and she also has cerebral palsy, and she thinks that she's not worth a lot, but and she lives in a small town, and in that small town there are two policemen, and they get the feeling that Robbie knows more about the life of the town than they do. And so they encourage her to become an investigator. And they come to her to see what she knows about what's going on in the town, and she helps them to catch. In one of my other books, she helped them to catch a thief, and from there on they start to have her help them to investigate crimes, and that's what she does.
I love it. I love it. That sounds like fun, and especially, well, I'm the type of person that I like a good mystery or a whodunit. You know, trying to figure out what's next. So I love that. Now, why did you write the story the way in which you did? Like, why did you make sure you added this particular element to your story?
Well, it's an element which I know best because being disabled with cerebral palsy, I have a lot of trouble sort of speaking sometimes, and so I sit and watch, and so I just incorporated elements that I myself do, and a lot of the time I know a lot of what's going on in the community where other people don't. And it's just something that it's a gift. It's a gift that you have. And I know that I just have that gift, and I just transposed it to the book.
Absolutely. I love it. You know, it is a special thing when you're writing about something that you're familiar with. You are able to add those extra bits to it that if you didn't know what you were talking about, you couldn't add it to it. So I definitely understand that. Now, as far as we understand, so many authors choose to write their characters from the perspective of someone that you know. Now, we know that you've added the touch of your character is also dealing with cerebral palsy, but did you give her any other characteristics of yourself or perhaps others that you know?
Yes, my character is based on a person that I know and respect. Another disabled woman with cerebral palsy, that I've known since I was 5 years old, and some of the things that she has to do with the cerebral palsy are the same as what this other lady has. And so I was able, because I've known her for such a long time, I know what she does and how she does it and things like that. But I also add in some of the things that I have actually had to deal with along the way as well. And one of my characters, the character of Joel, is based on a young man that I met some years ago, and he was an amazing person. He also had cerebral palsy, and he was an amazing young man. He apparently died in a car accident a few years ago, but he was. I based his character on him, the character on him, because he was such a sweet and lovely young man.
Yes, of course. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear of his passing. Especially those people that are so nice, that are kind, that are dear to our hearts. It's always hard to hear that. Now, when you were writing the book, did you have an ideal reader in mind? Like, were you writing this for fellow handy-abled people, or were you more so writing this simply for anyone who wants to read a good story?
Well, there are two types of people that I wrote for, and one is the able-bodied, because I wanted them to know just what it was like to be disabled, not the bad things, but the good things about it, because I have a lot of people who come up to me and say, "Oh, you poor thing, it must be a hard life." Well, it isn't a hard life. It's a real easy life for me, and I wanted to show all the good things about being disabled, and also I wanted to encourage other disabled people to actually do good things for themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Now, the way that someone who purchases the book, how should they read your book? Should they read it cover to cover, like page by page? Should they read it chapter by chapter? What's the best way?
Well, I think that just the way that I've written it is that each chapter is complete, so you can actually read a chapter and just put it down and then pick it up and read it again, read the next chapter. So it's just one of those things that whatever you feel like to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like asking this question because some people need the instructions. Some people like to flop over the book and just start where it lands. Others like to read the last page first. So it's
I think that it's so funny to read the last page first and not know the actual story. Because I like to, when I write my books, I like to have, when I write them, some people use, they use formulas, but I don't like formulas. I don't like them at all. But I like to write a story from one event to the next, to the next, to the next. And I like to actually just link those events. And, hopefully I have done that quite well. So, and that's the way I like to write.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love it. Well, Toria, it is time for us to go to break. But before we do, can you please remind everyone of the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And of course, how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes, my book is called Undercover in the Speedy World, and you can get it from Amazon, or hopefully from some bookshops. And to get in touch with me, I do have an email in there, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, just look in the book, in the front of the book, and there is my email. And I don't mind getting emails from people. And you can also, I have a website called toriasbooks.com, and you can actually see who I am.
We'll be back right after this. And we are back. And thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. My guest today is Toria Newman, and we're talking about her book, Undercover, Miss Speedy Wheels. And I like that title. Now, as far as your overall message is concerned, I love what you are sharing with the readers of the book. Now let's focus on the cover of the book. We know that the inside is good. I want to talk about the outside because it is equally as interesting. What did you choose for your cover? Because I realize not everyone has seen the cover. What did you choose for the cover of your book, and why did you choose that cover?
The cover is of a girl in a wheelchair. In the background you can see a hat of a detective, and also it is like a fingerprint. Now the girl in the wheelchair is a real girl, a real woman, and it is a photo of her, but she chose not to have her face seen on the cover, and so that is the way that it is in her wheelchair. It is her. It wouldn't be good to have me on the cover because I'm 70 years old, and the main character is round about 28, and so it was good to have someone a little bit younger, but sort of in silhouette.
Yes, I can definitely understand why you chose to do that. Very mindful of you for doing that. Now, when you were putting your book together, did you find that you needed any particular atmosphere or environment? Like, did you need to be kind of away from the hustle and bustle of the day in order to write? Or were you able to it didn't matter what was going on around you, you were still able to get your thoughts down?
Well, I write when I'm in my lounge, and most of the time I've got my TV on, and it doesn't matter, and I've got birds in the background that sing. I've got canaries, but my main thing was that that particular book was inspired by Rod Stewart's I don't want to talk about it. And I don't know why I like that song, but I just love the song. And every time I play it, I got inspired to write. Very strange. But that's the way it was. So Rod Stewart was my, and I don't want to talk about it, was a great inspiration to me.
Absolutely. I think that it is quite curious because everyone, I think, has that theme song. They have that song that gets them fired up. And when they hear it, it inspires them to keep going. So, hey, I love it that was your writing song, that's what got you really fired up and ready. So I love it. I love it. Now, for so many of the authors that I talk to, they have a desire to write again. Now, I know that you are an author of other books, and I want to talk about that in a few minutes. But as far as writing more books are concerned, do you think that you have officially been bitten by the author's bug and that you will continue to write more? Or do you think that this is the last book for now?
No, I've got a book on the go at the moment, and it's a follow-up to Miss Speedy Wheels, and it's about the same girl, and it's the next episode in her story, and I'm round about 6 or 7 chapters into that now, and I have been asked by people if I would write a kid's book, and because I love animals, it would probably be something to do with animals. Yeah, but I'm thinking about it at the moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love how, and especially with authors, and those who are creative in general, you can have something that sometimes you have to kind of spin it around in your head a few times and, kind of take it around the block a few times, if you will. So to really get it right and to figure out what exactly do I want to talk about or how do I want to hone in on this particular subject. And once you get it, you hit the ground running, and it's a beautiful thing. It's like it just takes off, and it ends up being awesome. So I know that you will definitely figure that out when the time comes. Now,
Yeah.
I said a little bit earlier. That is that you are an author of other books as well. Can you tell us a little bit about those books?
Yes, the first book was called The Chrysalis, and it was the first book about Robbie, and it was to do with her first time that she was becoming independent, and that was the first book. It's called The Chrysalis, Robbie's story, and Robin's story, and then I've got my own story, which is called A Million Reasons, and that is about my own life. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. I love how you're willing to share, and in that transparency, I think it allows others to understand better. We have so many people that are going through things in our lives, and we don't always know how to ask the question without being offensive in some way. But when someone writes about it, or when someone gives you a little bit of instruction, it really and truly does help you know what to say, how to say it, or to be able to start up a conversation. So I love that you have been able to do that. Now, just a few more questions for you, and the next is to help those that are the loved ones of someone dealing with cerebral palsy. What is a bit of advice that you can help that person who loves someone with, or they're a caretaker of and that they assist or they're a part of the support team, what is one thing that they really need to know and understand about what their loved one is going through?
Well, as far as cerebral palsy, if the child has abilities to do stuff for themselves. Now, this is what my mother did. She told me to get into the kitchen and do the dishes. Or she told me to go out and do some gardening. And she told me to get out and go to the movies. And I wasn't to sit around and mope. Otherwise, she'd give me a good thrashing. And those were the days when you were allowed to give your kids a good thrashing. You're not allowed to do it today, but that's what she told me, and I did it because I didn't want to be in trouble, And so what the parents need to do is to make those kids go and have a good life, not to bundle them up and overprotect them, because life needs to be loved, and they need to be able to do things for themselves, and this is what I tried to show in the book, that Robbie does have gifts in her own right, and she needs to get out and use them, and not be sitting at home moping about, thinking about, thinking that she hasn't got a life, because she has. You just got to find it.
I like that piece of advice. You just have to find your piece of life. I think that's true for everyone. Let's not mope around, but get out there and find our piece of life. I love it. I love it. Well, Toria Newman, thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today. I have enjoyed my conversation with you. But before I let you go, can you remind everyone, please, what is the title of your book? Where can we get a copy? And, of course, for those who want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, my book is called Undercover Miss Speedy Wheels, and you can get it from Amazon or anywhere like that. And if you want to get in touch with me, I have an email which is in the book, and also I have a website which is toriasbooks.com, and you can actually email me through there if you want to. And I love to get emails from people, and that, and I do have a social media page, and you can find me on Facebook, and it's Toria K. Newman, because there are two Toria Newmans on Facebook, and or anything like that. Just look me up on the net if you want to.
I love it. Toria, thank you again for spending time with me here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. And listeners, thank you for spending time with me as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with us, and I thank you for doing that. I hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.